You know,
but you learn from that, didn't you?
Well, you do, but I mean, people say you shouldn't have regrets.
No.
Well, I don't agree with that, because I think if you've hurt people in life, that is a reason for regret, and I certainly regret how I acted in my first marriage. That's for sure. But anyway.
It's kind of important. Regrets are they are a form of learning, because it's like reviewing things that you've done in the past, and I think, and I've come across this as well, when you occasionally you come across a person who you can class as psychopathic, and they don't have regrets, they don't have any conscience at all, and they're a different breed to the normal person. I've come across one or two.
No doubt about that. I think we've all known a few of those in our lifetime.
Yeah, but I also because I did a bit of study. I've done a video with Men's Matters on sociopathy and psychopathy, and not that I'm a psychologist, but I did do a bit. It was one of my little minor subjects when I did a degree years and years ago. But one of the things is there was a difference between sociopaths and psychopaths, and I thought that's kind of interesting, because although they often cite, and the statistics show that there are twice as many male psychopaths as female psychopaths, there are a lot more female sociopaths than male sociopaths, and that's kind of interesting, because then I had to define what was the difference.
Yeah.
And the sociopath is like a damaged person. The psychopath is like born that way, with a problem of empathy and that kind of stuff. But the sociopath is created. So if you abuse a child for years on end, the chances are that child will become a sociopath, which means that they have empathy, but it's a selective empathy, or abused, that their empathy is misused. So
I've learned something today. I didn't know that.
And I found a lot of, in fact, I don't. It's a loose statistic, so it's not sort of concrete, but I found there are about 5 times as many females with sociopathic problems than males, which means the socio-psychopath group has got more women in it.
Well, that's going to be controversial for a start. That's going to upset a few people.
That's what I found. I just found from I was asked to by my local MP. In fact, when was it? 2014, 15? I can't remember what it is now. Not that many years ago. There was a problem with a man locally, and he'd had separation from his other half, and she went up. When did she go up to? Was it Guildford or somewhere, or Hazelmere, somewhere like that? Right. Anyway. And there was a son involved, and so when I went to got involved in it, I had a letter, so I was acting on behalf of, and there was no doubt at all, you didn't have to be an expert, that the wife was a sociopath. She definitely was. She was. I don't know how many screws were missing. I don't know, but.
Well, you get us into hot water.
This is the problem, and the thing is as well, what was affecting the boy. He was only, how old was he? He was 8 or something like that. He wasn't that very old, but he was having psychological problems because of this issue. And so, we talk about one-on-one domestic violence, but the kids really do suffer.
Exactly. And I think the children are the ones that are overlooked. There's a lot of people out there doing some really great work to help kids in these situations, and it feels a bit like men, really. They seem to be the ones that are overlooked. Because the media is dominated by women and girls.
Yes.
Everything. I'll give you a good example. When Clare's Law was released, in my talks, most people had never even heard of Clare's Law. But when Clare's Law was released, it was a great idea that was designed to help protect men and women.
Yes.
But when you release something like that, you release it on International Women's Day for a start. You call it Clare's Law. It gives the impression that it's something that's dedicated towards women. And when you also look at the language that was used on its release by Theresa May, who was the then Home Secretary, all based around women and girls, constantly using that phrase, women and girls. So it's no surprise that men have been found to A, either not know that Clare's Law exists, or B, think that it's something that's designed for women only.
It's not for them,
Which is why we need to have a real change in the way we use wordings when we talk about domestic abuse.
Yes.
We need to stop referring to women and girls, men and boys. For me, it's about sufferers, because again, I don't like the word victim. For me, I try to use the word sufferers. Sufferers of domestic abuse and survivors of domestic abuse. And that's what it should be. Legislation that's written should be about sufferers and survivors, not about women and girls or men and boys. You know, let's be inclusive. Let's have this equality we keep hearing about.
Yeah.
Another thing I raised recently, we have a woman and equalities minister. Well, surely one cancels
Penny
out
Morgan.
the other.
Yeah.
One cancels out the other.
Yeah.
Once you highlight one gender, surely that cancels out the word equality.
Yeah, well,
because you're showing more.
Penny Morgan is my MP, believe it or not.
Oh, is she? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have you written to her?
Oh, several times. We haven't met each other for since she's gone into the cabinet.
Okay. Has she given you a response?
Not last time, no. But
No?
I think since she's got that position and Brexit's taken over. She's.
Let's not go down that road.
It seems to have consumed the entire government's concentration.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was not a declared feminist, and she's very much for meritocracy, and and we mentioned the word equality, and this is something I picked up on as well. Is that we're more for fairness rather than equality, because sometimes you and I, whatever we do won't be equal.
Yeah.
But we want fair treatment. We want to make sure that the rules are fair and you're treated fairly, I'm treated fairly. And there's a difference there I've found as well. But this equality thing gets sort of commandeered, like you say, by the feminist contingent.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I was a counsellor for 4 years as well. And I won't go into all the things, there's some stories on that one.
I bet there is.
But I mean, basically, it's a battle for resources. The old.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a really important point. Actually, I was having a great conversation with a representative from Mankind the other day.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said.
It's not Mark Brooks, was it?
It was.
Mark, Mark Brooks. Yeah.
And he said something really important. Actually, he said when you give your talks, he said one of the things you need to try and get across is that what you're not trying to do is. I, as an advocate for men, am not looking for the government or anybody else to take funds away from women and girls.
Yeah.
Okay, the government needs to provide enough funds to deal with the entire domestic abuse situation. Don't take funds from women and girls to give it to men, because again, that's just going to drive a wedge further between women and men, which is something we don't want.
No,
we want to come together as sufferers and survivors.
It's a collective
to deal.
problem, isn't it? That's just
it is, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just come together to help all sufferers and survivors.
Well, do you know, I listened to Mark Brooks once on radio, not that many years ago, and he was on the same programme, Radio 4, with, I don't know that she was, but she was the CEO of Women's Aid. Right now, the Women's Aid woman was saying, just this point, you're taking resources away from women. Yeah. And you looked at it, actually, Mark Brooks was doing his job, if you like, on the cuff. He was having to work full time. Yeah. Lucky if he got expenses at all. Yeah. And the total income of Mankind was less than her salary.
Really?
Yeah. She was on, I don't know what it was, she was on something like £200,000 a year plus. Yeah. This is a charity, right? And she's and then what was it? And that was not including the pension fund as well on top of it. And there was him working on a shoestring, and she's complaining about taking away resources.
I mean, it's the same for me. I can add into that. I've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
But since I've become an advocate, I've probably lost in excess of £1,000 just in the last 6 weeks.
Yes.
Through taking time off work, unpaid, to do advocacy work that includes meetings and talks. So it's a good point. Heads of charities seem to get paid a lot of money.
Oh, they do, yeah.
But that's another subject.
Yeah. I used to find it funny when they sort of have a London marathon and then it's running for Women's Aid or whatever it is, or Refuge is another one. Yeah. And you're thinking, well, you mean you're running to collect money to pay them, not help any women.
Yeah. But that said, I was talking. I won't mention her name, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and she asked me why I didn't charge for my talks. I said I didn't feel comfortable with it because I'm, at the end of the day, I went through a difficult experience and I want to try and help others. But she did have a good point. Well, if I'm taking time off work.
Yes.
And it's making my financial situation difficult. Really, I should be looking to do that. And I was recently approached to do a talk. They've agreed that I'll be one of the speakers for the day. Again, I don't want to mention who it is because it's not.
No, that's fine.
It's not concreted in yet. But
well, this broadcast is timeless. So if you gave a date and a time, it'd make the
that's very true.
Out of date straight away.
But when I was first approached by this gentleman to do a talk, I said I would do it for free.
Yes.
Since then, and that's only been less than a couple of months ago, I did say at the time that if I found myself having to take a lot of time off work, I may have to, think about introducing a charge later on. And really, it has reached that point, really.
Well, I can only say, because I do go to a few meetups. This is one of these programs online. I went to one the other night. It was to do with history and that. And the speaker there, wasn't charging so much, but they did a collection, so everyone paid £3.
Yeah.
That went towards the expenses for turning up. And so maybe that'd be an idea. Just remember £3 entry fees.
Yeah, possibly.
Is the going rate in 2019?
But obviously, people who run charities are doing an important job.
Yes.
I don't know what's involved, and they may well be worth that $200,000 a year.
Yes.
But obviously, it's difficult.
Yeah, well, I was kind of shocked it was that much. I thought,
when you see someone earn that kind of money and at the same time talking about not taking funds away from the charity, I can see that.
I thought there was a bit of hypocrisy going on. Because I think it was at the time. I think it was the mankind total income was something like 30,000 or 40,000.
Really?
Well, I mean, and she's on 200,000. What's she talking about?
Yeah, I can understand that argument. Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the reason that I wanted it. I became a life coach.
Yeah.
I trained to be a life coach after things that went on in my own personal life that pushed me in that direction. The death of my parents and my sister all within a year of each other. Yeah. Being first on the scene to a road traffic accident where a young girl died. These little things in life push you off in a different direction. And then my second divorce, which cost me everything, and basically at the age of 49, I was back in a back room, a friend's back room with nothing. So all these things pushed me in that direction. But whilst undertaking the life coaching and getting online and speaking to people, somewhere along the line the domestic abuse situation was raised. And once I started to speak about that, it's really snowballed. It appears that there aren't that many men out there who've been through domestic abuse who are willing to stand up and talk about it. I've now set myself 5 goals. The first one and most important one is to stand up, talk about my experiences, in the hope that it will encourage other men and hopefully women too to come forward, speak about their own experiences and reach out and get that help that they really need. I think that's the important thing, is to take that first step, reach out to somebody and start talking about it, because then it becomes slightly easier, and then hopefully if you talk to the right people, in my case it was my occupational health department at work, and that you can move forward from there. In my book that I released last year, which has nothing to do with domestic abuse, I did include a couple of paragraphs where I talked about taking back control of your life, and I used domestic abuse as an example of that, where I said you've got to take that control back, but you first have to admit that decisions that you have made have put you in that position. Now, I had somebody say to me, that's outrageous, you can't. Basically what you're saying is that somebody who suffered domestic abuse, you're saying that it's their own fault. No, that's not what I'm saying.
No, I know you're trying to say.
You are not responsible. You are not in any way responsible for somebody abusing you. No. Whether that's a punch in the face, controlling your finances, or anything else. But you are responsible for making the decision to be with that person.
Yes.
You're responsible for making the decision to stay with that person.
Yes.
Despite the fact we all know, those of us that have been through it, how complex it is. You can't just walk away like so many people always ask. But once you accept that you are responsible, however small that way is, then you can start to take back control.